I just finished my 2 new modular workbenches. In order to keep the cost of construction down, I used OSB instead of birch plywood. OSB is a perfect kind of board for these sorts of projects. The only thing required to use it safely is to reinforce it with a more resistant board in some places, such as where the casters are screwed. I painted the board with matte black enamel. I love how the board looks when painted. This was only for the sake of decoration. You won't have any functional issues if you decide not to paint the OSB. As I've shown in previous videos, I modified its retractable leveling casters so that I could activate them from the top of the workbench. To do this, I gave a hexagonal head to a threaded rod that goes down the bench leg to the caster. With this modification, I can lock and level the modules in any part of my workshop. I'm going to lift the caster's footpad to move the modules and show all of their functions. It's a very easy operation that only takes a few seconds. If, like in my case, the floor of your workshop is not perfectly level, this system will allow you to lock the wheels and at the same time make the modules flush and in line with each other. On this occasion, I didn't install the plywood parts that join the 2 modules together, but it's perfectly possible to do so. Just like with my previous modular workbenches, I can also secure all sorts of workpieces on the front of the bench. I only have to insert the hold-fast clamps into the holes I made. I also installed a T-track profile so I can use clamps. This time I have not made holes in the top so that I can use the hold-fast clamps or bench docks. This is also perfectly feasible, allowing us to hold parts on the top and make use of all the options the system provides. To save time and money, instead of making drawers, I used plastic Euro boxes. They're quite economical and I can take them anywhere in the workshop or change their emplacement. They slide on some strips of wood that act as rails. After applying some wax on them, they slide really smoothly. There are boxes with different heights. You can choose any combination as long as you don't forget to leave enough space between them. I barely had to modify the original design. The boxes adapted to it without issue. I think it's hard to find the same model of box in the United States, but there are other very similar models that you can most likely adapt to this design. The boxes are designed to hold a lot of weight. The only thing we should take into account is that we should leave some space between them, as the bottom of the boxes warps with weight. Needless to say, you can build the drawers of the original design instead of using these boxes. These new benches are around 67 centimeters deep, almost 70 centimeters if we count the tool holder. This is a little more than the depth of the previous benches, and this is due to several reasons. First of all, because I wanted a work surface that was a little larger. Besides, this will allow me to access the back of the Euro boxes more easily. And finally, because I can also use the clamps in the front to secure workpieces on the workbench top. This isn't required. You can make them a little less deep and make the drawers flush with the front of the bench. I've also fastened a tool holder to the back of the benches for two reasons. I like having some tools close to hand to leave the top of the workbench obstacle-free, and also to prevent the bench from bumping against the wall sockets behind it. Another solution would be to build worktops that are a little deeper so that they stick out a little in the back of the bench. I'm going to detach one of the worktops to see some things in more detail. I use a depth stop bit to hold the threaded rod. The screws can't hold much on the edge of the OSB, so I'm going to apply a little cyanoacrylate in the hole. Another option would be to make a slightly wider hole to insert a dowel. I also applied some polyplast on the edge of the bench's legs, not only to improve its final look, but I also think it will provide some hardness. You can see the difference between the leg and the top cross rail. This design provides various configurations to get more out of the workbench. If you'd like more information, I suggest watching the other videos on my channel regarding this project. I'll leave a link to the playlist in the description. Now I'm going to unlock the wheels and put the workbenches away. When they're up against the wall, I level and lock the benches again. All of these operations are quite quick and easy to do thanks to this modification of the wheels. I believe this is one of the improvements that is worth every second you invest in it. I updated the modular workbench plans available on my website. I added 2 folders with all the information required so that you can make these modifications. I'll also leave a link to them in the description of this video. Now I'll show you the steps you should follow to finish this project. First, I'm going to cut the drawer slides. I'll use some pine floorboards I had in my workshop. I'm going to bezel the edges so that the plastic boxes will slide better. I make sure they're the right size. Ideally, there should be a couple of millimeters of play between the box and the slides. I drill all the necessary holes and screw the slides to the sides of the bench. I'll use some spacers to make this job easier. I need to install a backstop for the boxes. I'll use 15mm thick plywood. It's time to drill the hole so I can fasten the worktop. I'm also going to bezel all of its edges. Now I'll apply some polyplast to the visible edges of the bench. Since it's easier now, I'll sand and paint the entire bench now. I'm going to build a tool holder out of the same boards as the worktop. I got some small pieces of 10mm plywood that will act as spacers. I'll glue them on with cyanoacrylate. All that's left now is to drill some holes and fasten the tool holder to the back of the bench. I'll use some guides to leave it flush with the worktop. That's all for today. Thank you for watching this video until the end.